If your YouTube feed looks anything like mine, you've definitely gotten lost in the what if side of the internet at some point. After all, it can be hard to resist the allure of alternate history scenarios. Well, that's for me at least. They do wonders for my imagination. Years ago, Nixium nailed this concept for WoW with his alternate lore series. And I'll be doing something similar, but focusing mainly on the gameplay rather than lore. Something that has always frustrated me about WoW is the enormous unreached potential. Take for an example the minor factions in WoW. For 22 years, it's been the exact same loop. An expansion releases, introduces new factions, and for those factions, you grind rep through dailies, you fill a bar, you get your mount, toy, pet or recipe, and you just move on. It's midnight now, and we are still doing the exact same chore list for mostly the same rewards. I'd like to take you back to a time when anything felt possible, and I'll try my best to illustrate how minor factions could have had meaningful and interesting game mechanics that would stand the test of time. The year is 2005. You are playing Classic. Or it's 2019 and you're playing Classic. Or it's 2024 and you're playing Classic. Or maybe we need to travel to the future and play Classic Plus. However you slice it, you are playing Classic and a highly anticipated patch releases. It's the PvP overhaul that introduces the battlegrounds and a few other minor things, and it basically pushes you into instanced gameplay. In the same patch, there is another change introduced, and this one will pull you out of those instances. 2 new factions have formed from the actions you took during your first year of playing Classic. Gazlowe, instead of joining the Horde, leverages his newfound wealth from trade with the Alliance and Horde to establish his Bilgewater cartel as a more prominent and powerful player on the world stage. The cartel is well supplied, rich, and in need of hard-working employees to do their dirty work. The other faction is born out of the pirates and seafaring peoples you defeated while questing and leveling. All of the old hideouts and enclaves have merged into an alliance calling themselves the Privateers. They aren't as wealthy or influential as the cartel, but have great potential due to their cross-continental trading routes. You, as a member of the Horde or Alliance, have the opportunity to enlist into the service of one of these factions. And here's why these would be interesting and different than any other minor faction we encountered so far. Rather than being given items, you are acting as one of the members of that faction, gaining their trust along the way, and learning how to operate as a cartel member or a privateer. Under Gazlowe and his goblins, you will no longer be charged for fees while using the auction house. You will also be able to provide mobile banking services at a flat fee for non-cartel members that are actually players. This would be useful in raids, for example, because you won't have the modern mobile banking systems. Now this next one is a bit crazy, but I think it's one of the more fun ones. You will have access to a Goblin lender NPC that allows you to lend gold to other players at interest. If they don't pay you back by the agreed date, you can hire a rogue from the Ravenhold faction to assassinate the target, loot their corpse, and retrieve your gold. If the target doesn't have all of your gold in their pockets, they go into the negative. And any gold they earn will first need to cover that, so maybe they need to lend from somebody else. That's just to avoid any gold mailing shenanigans to alts and such. Or if that's a bit too crazy, you can just go with something more manageable, which is you, alongside with other cartel members, can create and manage insular, guild or multi-guild, auction house and banking systems. As for the privateers, you would gain access to new fast travel routes from all of the old major pirate hideouts and settlements. There's also a 10% gold earning increase when selling anything to vendors. As the primary mechanic, you will receive a privateer crest that, when equipped, makes you neutral to all around you, be they Horde, Alliance, or a member of the cartel, or even regular NPCs. If you then kill one of those players, you receive trophies rather than honor, and these trophies you can exchange for gold, utility and cosmetic items, and high-end PvP gear. And way later down the line, when housing comes into the game, you can have unique trading port settlements. By the way, since I mentioned Ravenhold Assassins, of course that faction already exists since Classic, but in my opinion it was never utilized for anything besides a few quests back then, and then a few quests in Legion for the artifact weapons, if I remember correctly. It could have been one of the rogue-specific factions, which could have been a neutral version of the SI7 and Deathstalkers, allowing rogues to collect bounties from both the Alliance and Horde. And in later patches and expansions, more of these factions would be added, providing some unique gameplay loops or interesting mechanics. For instance, the Kirin Tor could be a mage-only faction, which would be introduced in early Burning Crusade. When you first meet Khadgar, he puts you in contact with one of the other archmages, thereby creating a psychic link with them, and they could groom you to become an archmage in a later expansion. By doing their quests, you get some utility spells that are meant to be used out of combat primarily. Think of something like a mass teleport spell that, when used, you teleport your entire raid to your location. As you might guess, after a few expansions of factions with actual mechanics, the game would look, feel and play much differently. And in my opinion, it would be more immersive and more cohesive as a world. What's important is that there is interplay between the factions, between the players of the factions, and between the mechanics which aren't solely focused on power and cosmetics. By the way, I think that you could do some of this today, maybe to a lesser extent, since not much in the game matters anymore, but still, I think it can be done. When it comes to goblins, if you really think about it, they are still a major part of the world and lore. And they had a really interesting place, a zone, the Undermine, in the War Within. But all of that gameplay was limited to that one place. It wasn't really a faction or anything like that, and all of the mechanics and special rules it had remained there. Once you are no longer in Undermine, nothing carries over. But besides the obvious, another time I would have loved to see a faction was in Dragonblight. Correct me if I'm wrong, but dragons were always a big deal in WoW. Orcs used to breed them and ride them into battle. Their eggs were highly valued and valuable. Why not have a morally questionable or even evil faction of dwarves and orcs working together that not only hunt dragons but steal their eggs? Why not let you join this faction, or at least help them to some extent, and be a bastard who takes the offspring of the good guys in that expansion, selling the eggs for a huge amount of gold, using them as unique pets, mounts and toys. And if they ever did decide to experiment with aerial combat, since they already have this new flying system, this would have been the way to give you a fire-spewing dragon to ride into combat with. The point of this endeavor would be endless player-generated content, while Blizzard only provides the basic rules of engagement and the framework by which the factions function. So players would be much freer in a sense, and what's special about that is that it results in emergent gameplay. While it can be a nightmare to balance from Blizzard's perspective, as any game is with a lot of emergent gameplay, balance does not really need to be a priority for an MMO like WoW, and never should have been a priority, in my opinion at least. If you're not familiar with what this term is, by the way, it's a really unique and interesting phenomenon in video games where unanticipated player experiences emerge from the interactions of simple rules and mechanics, rather than being directly scripted or predefined by developers. I highly recommend that you check out this video from Timothy Kane about the topic. His videos are highly informative if you're at all into game design or just like hearing stories about it. I'll just spend a few minutes talking about this concept when it comes to WoW, because I think it's really important and something that used to happen all the time in vanilla and TBC, and I don't think ever happens these days. One famous example is the corrupted blood incident from Zul'Gurub, and I think everybody knows what that is. Another is the Lord Kazakh kiting incident, but again, those two are more one-off events and not gameplay loops. One gameplay loop that possibly falls into this categorization is how we use rank 1 spells in Classic. I'm not quite sure if it was ever intended to work as it does, and to be used all the time in all of these different situations, be it CC or mana preservation or what have you. But just in case it was intended, I'll explain another example that has a special place in my heart: the Wreck Bomb Paladin build. Now, as a Paladin, we could reliably stack the Reckoning talent up to 4 times by sitting down. When we sit down, there's a 100% critical hit chance on us, and we want that critical hit to be able to use Reckoning and hit more times than once. When we stack it up to 4, we unleash the Wrath of the Light on unassuming Horde players. The downside of this is if you are not the one doing this, and you just explain it to someone, it sounds dumb. It looks clunky and unnecessary. And yes, that's true. But while doing it, there is a feeling of satisfaction that I can hardly compare to most of my time spent in WoW. This is because you participate in a gameplay loop that has no right to exist, and is definitely not intended. But, and it's a big but, it was permitted to exist for a long time in original vanilla, in Classic, on the private servers, and I believe in Burning Crusade as well. Because really, it never actually broke the game. It just offered a unique playstyle that not many knew about, and even less people got into it. So the more open the game becomes with different forms of gameplay, because the restrictions are lessened, the more situations like this emerge. And if anything becomes too complex, too absurd, too abused, simply purge one of the mechanics or entire factions from the game and make up a lore reason for it. And if it's being abused and it's not fun to play against, then you can just explain that that faction was too powerful, they got too greedy, everybody else ganged up and deleted them. Or if it's too weak and nobody's using it, the faction naturally within the lore just fizzled out because they didn't have enough new members. I could go on for much longer with other factions and gameplay loops, but I hope that you have enjoyed the video, and I hope that it got some of your own ideas and wishes for the game to the forefront of your mind. If so, I'd love to hear them down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.